In following Arthur Ransome's thoughts and footsteps, we come to the River Lune in North Lancashire, with Ransome, our surest of guides. Here, he introduces us to a delightful notion, one which, if we grasp it, would ensure pleasure wherever we are. Even without a rod and line, a perfect day's fishing can be had simply by watching other fishermen and recalling other days. If I am walking with a man and we pass an urchin fishing with a bent pin in a ditch, and my companion is unwilling to linger, I suspect that he's a poor specimen of a human being, and I'm certain that he's no fisherman. In any case, I should not be keen to go for a walk with him again. I should feel for him the same resentment that I felt for the liner in the Bay of Biscay that carried me all too fast past the tunny fisher, with his huge fishing rods hinged to the base of his mast, while looking back through glasses, I hoped and hoped till the tunny fisher was a blob on the horizon, that I should see that 70-foot rod flutter and spring under the tugs of a gigantic fish. Tight lines. Out of many years of travel, the moments that need least remembering, because their detail is still as bright and clear as when it was first burned into my mind, are the moments spent in watching fishermen. Is that maggot?
Single maggot.
20 hooks.
20 hooks. Single maggot. £1 breaking strain line.
£1?
£1 breaking.
£1 breaking strain line. Yeah.
Dear God.
That's the first try. We'll call you again for the bigger ones.
I think of the Arab with his long bamboo, whom I watched till dusk catching mullet, I think, in the harbour of Alexandria. Of the workmen in Petrograd, sitting on the stern post of a barge in the Neva, fishing for perch, while the revolution was noisily proceeding in the town. Of walking at night during a long journey with post horses and seeing the yellow flashing of the torches carried by the fish spearers in the river. Of the eel fisher in a Riga canal who held me for an hour when I should have been hurrying back to my little ship and stores for which I'd come ashore. Of the rows of long rods dangled perpendicularly downwards from the embankments of the Seine. Of the sheepskin-coated, felt-booted crowd fishing through the ice under the Kremlin walls. And of that spectacle that welcomes the returning traveller, that row of men in oilskins who seem to fish in all weathers from the piers of Dover Harbour. I'm never likely to do any netting, but I cannot see a net being drawn without waiting to see what's in it. How much more difficult do I find it to move on when I come across a fisherman using a rod and line? Most interesting of all is to watch the fly fisher. It's interesting, and I fancy, unnecessarily humbling. Watching an angler is like reading the biography of a man whose life in some way closely resembles our own. We do not often assume equality with him. It is very seldom that we watch a fisherman who seems to cast as badly as we know we sometimes cast ourselves. Nearly always the watched fisherman seems to cast with enviable skill. That is because only the trout is as conscious as the actual fisherman of the bungled cast and the splash of the line in the water. The observer sees the general movement, not the detail. He sees the line lift, fly back, and coming forward, unroll itself with easy precision. The thing seems a miracle, and yet, in 9 cases out of 10, observer and fisherman could change places without affecting the impression made. Criticism is usually not of the casting, but of the fisherman's use of his obvious, astonishing skill. The observer, looking at the river, knows just where, if he were fishing it, he would wish the fly to alight. The fisherman omits to send it into just that place. I remember watching one of the finest casters and worst fishermen I've ever seen. His action was beautiful, effortless, rhythmic, never a jerk, never a tussle with one of those jack-in-the-box hawthorn bushes that weren't there when we looked round, but pop up out of the earth just in time to catch our fly. But cast after cast, dropped his fly perfectly in precisely those places where, unless by the accident of travel, no trout would ever be. This fisherman chose those places where the trout lay, not to fish over, but to stand in. I'd never seen a more delicate and more unprofitable performance.
And then I remember watching another man who, though his casting was not pretty to watch, always managed to get his share of fish. Again and again, he would pick up a trout from a place where I should certainly have passed over, though after he had taken the trout from it, it was easy to see just why it was a proper station for a feeding fish. Both these men were worth watching. There was something to learn from them. But if they had been simply downstream raking with wet flies, I should have watched them just the same. Fishing of any kind is to the fisherman one of the vividest forms of life, and other fishermen watch him and live vicariously in so doing. Much as we intensify our consciousness of existence by going to the play. We share his excitement, and so primitive are we in this matter that we are apt, at the great moments, when he has a good fish on, to shout advice from the gallery. It is only the man who is himself highly developed as a fisherman who can refrain at such moments from seeking to thrust himself from among the audience upon the stage itself.
Yeah, I go again. Try that now, John. Always a better fish, yeah. You don't get many of them in the tin of John West.
Fishermen are those who get most out of watching other people fish. But they are not the only folk who watch them. Nearly everybody does.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it's a beauty. He's a great big thing.
Everybody, I should say, except those who have been thoroughly disheartened by life.
Splendid.
Try again now.
Even old ladies who cannot tell the difference between salmon and cod, except when boiled, cannot tear themselves away from the bridge. The sight of a man running towards a railway station makes people stop and wonder if he's going to catch his train.
But this interest is mild and colourless compared to that with which, on seeing an angler, they will neglect all duties to watch if he will catch a fish.
The train is hidden from us by nothing more mysterious than the bricks and mortar of the railway station. Also, the catching of a train is calculable. Even the biggest trains do not elude us, if we take our seats in time. Not so with the fish.
He is in another element, and the fisherman, plain to view, is fishing, as it were, into the fourth dimension, into the unknown. This, perhaps, explains his universal interest for other men. He shares the wondering interest, veiled sometimes in a joke, with which men stare after philosophers. The philosopher is sometimes unrecognized because he does not wear a druidic robe or carry a fishing rod to show that he is seeking to cozen something out of the unknown. The fisherman cannot disguise himself, and everyone who sees what he is about must stop, if only for a moment, to see what he gets out of it. Or if, as so often happens, he does not get anything at all.
See that big one over there? Well, I hope I shall remember all these reasons for forgiveness the next time, after I have laboriously waded to within casting distance of the big trout under the bridge. A group of spectators appears on the parapet, pointing out both fisherman and quarry, send the quarry to shelter and the fisherman to seek some other trout to stalk.